Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. We begin today's satsang with a prayer by Srimati Sapna Ganesh. This will be followed by the chanting of Muktaka trayam.
दक्षिणामूर्तिसारम्भाम् शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् रमणाचार्यपर्यन्ताम् वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् शुक्लां भरतरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये आङ्गिकं भुवनं यस्य वाचिकं सर्ववाङ्मयम् आहार्यं चन्द्रतारादि तं नमः सात्विकं शिवम् ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय. Namo Ramana to everyone.
Namo Ramana. Ekamaksharam Hridi Nirantaram Bhasate Swayam Likhyate Katham Hridaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahma Matram Hyaham Aham Iti Sakshat Atmarupena Bhati Hridi Vishamanasa Swam Chinvata Majjatava Pavana Chalana Rodha Atmanishto Bhavatvam Deham Maya Vajjadatmakam Aham Buddhirna Tasyastyato Naham Tattadabhavashukti Samaye Siddhatma Sadbhavataha Koham Bhavayuta Kuto Varadhiya Drishtvatmanishtatmana Soham Spurtitaya Arunachala Shivaha Purno Mibhati Swayam Soham Spurtitaya Arunachala Shivaha Purno Vibhati Swayam. Namo Ramana. We will now have the chanting of Upadesa Saram by Sri Ujwal Jagadeesh.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Vayurodhanaliyate mana जालपक्षिवद्रोदसादनं चित्तवायवश्चित्क्रियायुताः शाकयोर्द्वयी शक्तिमूलक लयविनाशने उभयरोदने लयगतं पुनर्भवति नोऽमृतं प्राणबन्धनाल्लीनमानसम् एकचिन्तनानाशमेत्यद नष्टमानसो उत्कृष्टयोगिन कृत्यमस्ति किं स्वस्तितिं यत दृश्यवारितं चित्तमात्मन चित्वदर्शनं तत्त्वदर्शनं मानसं तु किं मार्गणे कृते नैव मानसं मार्ग आर्जवात् वृत्तयस्त्वहं वृत्तिमाश्रिताः वृत्तयो मनो विद्यहं मन अहमयं कुतो भवति चिन्वत ऐपतत्यहं निजविचारणम् अहमिनाशभाज्यहमहं तय स्फुरति हृत्स्वयं परमपूर्णसत्। नमो रमण।
Namo Ramana. We will now have 3 songs presented from the Ramananjali Sangeetam. The first song will be presented by Srimati V. Radha. The second song will be presented by Dr. Pratibha Sundaresh. The third song will be presented by Revathi.
Namo Ramana to all. Today I have selected a song written by Shri Muruganath Swami. The Kannada translation is by Shri R.N. J. Gopal. The music is by Shri Pukarendi. ಎಲ್ಲ ಜೀವಿಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ನಲಿವ ಜಗದೀಶ ಪ್ರೇಮಾಮೃತ ಸಿಂಧು ಗುರುನಾಥ ರಮಣೇಶ ಗುರುನಾಥ ರಮಣೇಶ ಗುರುನಾಥ ರಮಣೇಶ ಜ್ಞಾನ ಕಿರಣ ಚೆಲ್ಲುವ 8 ದಿಕ್ಕಲ್ಲೂ ದೀನ ಜನ ಮಂದಾರ ಹರನೆ ಪಣಿಭೂಷ ಜ್ಞಾನ ಕಿರಣ ಚೆಲ್ಲುವ 8 ದಿಕ್ಕಲ್ಲೂ ದೀನ ಜನ ಮಂದಾರ ಹರನೆ ಪಣಿಭೂಷ ವೇದಾಂತಕ್ಕೂ ಸಿದ್ಧಾಂತಕ್ಕೂ ಸಿಗದ ಲೋಕೇಶ ನಮ್ಮೊಳಗೆ ನಿಂತು ಸದಾ ನಗುವ ರಮಣೇಶ ವೇದಾಂತಕ್ಕೂ ಸಿದ್ಧಾಂತಕ್ಕೂ ಸಿಗದ ಲೋಕೇಶ ನಮ್ಮೊಳಗೆ ನಿಂತು ಸದಾ ನಗುವ ರಮಣೇಶ ಎಲ್ಲ ಜೀವಿಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ನಲಿವ ಜಗದೀಶ ಪ್ರೇಮಾಮೃತ ಸಿಂಧು ಗುರುನಾಥ ರಮಣೇಶ ಗುರುನಾಥ ರಮಣೇಶ ಮನದ ತೊಳಲಾಟ ಈ ತನುವ ಜಂಜಾಟ ನೀಗಿ ಸರಿದಾರಿಯಲಿ ನಡೆಸೋ ಪರಮೇಶ ಮನದ ತೊಳಲಾಟ ಈ ತನುವ ಜಂಜಾಟ ನೀಗಿ ಸರಿದಾರಿಯಲಿ ನಡೆಸೋ ಪರಮೇಶ ನಾನೆನ್ನುವ ಅರಿವಲ್ಲೇ ಆನಂದವ ತರುವ ಆಧ್ಯಾತ್ಮದ ಅವಧೂತನು ನೀನೇ ರಮಣೇಶ ನಾನೆನ್ನುವ ಅರಿವಲ್ಲೇ ಆನಂದವ ತರುವ ಆಧ್ಯಾತ್ಮದ ಅವಧೂತನು ನೀನೇ ರಮಣೇಶ ಇಲ್ಲ ಜೀವಿಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ನಲಿವ ಜಗದೀಶ ಪ್ರೇಮಾಮೃತ ಸಿಂಧು ಗುರುನಾಥ ರಮಣೇಶ ಗುರುನಾಥ ರಮಣೇಶ ನಾನಾ ಮತ ರಂಗುರಂಗಿನ ಹಾರಾಧರೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲಾರನ್ನು ಒಂದಾಗಿಸೋದಾರ ಎಲ್ಲಾರನು ಒಂದಾಗಿ ಸೋದಾರ ರಮಣೇಶ. ನಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರ ಆ ದೈವವ ಅರಿತು ನಡೆದಾಗ ಮುಕ್ತಿ ಗದೆ ದಾರಿಯನೇ ನುಡಿವ ರಮಣೇಶ. ನಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರ ಆ ದೈವವ ಅರಿತು ನಡೆದಾಗ ಮುಕ್ತಿ ಗದೆ ದಾರಿಯನೇ ನುಡಿವ ರಮಣೇಶ. ಎಲ್ಲ ಜೀವಿಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ನಲಿವ ಜಗದೀಶ. ಪ್ರೇಮಾಮೃತ ಸಿಂಧು ಗುರುನಾಥ ರಮಣೇಶ. ಗುರುನಾಥ ರಮಣೇಶ. ಗುರುನಾಥ ರಮಣೇಶ. ನಮೋ ರಮಣ.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. This is a Kannada translation of Sri Sadhu Om Swami's song. ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಗುರು ರಮಣ ನೀನೆ ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಶಿವರೂಪ. ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಗುರು ರಮಣ ನೀನೆ ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಶಿವರೂಪ. ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಗುರು ರಮಣ ನೀನೆ ಭಕ್ತರ ಹೃದಯ ಪ್ರದೀಪ. ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಗುರು ರಮಣ ನೀನೆ ಭಕ್ತರ ಹೃದಯ ಪ್ರದೀಪ. ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಗುರು ರಮಣ ನೀನೆ ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಶಿವರೂಪ. ಯೋಗಿರಾಜನೇ ಸೂರ್ಯ ತೇಜನೆ ಭಾವೋನ್ಮಾದದ ಕಾರಣನೇ. ಯೋಗಿರಾಜನೇ ಸೂರ್ಯ ತೇಜನೆ ಭಾವೋನ್ಮಾದದ ಕಾರಣನೇ. ನಿನ್ನಯ ಸನ್ನಿಧಿ ಶಾಂತಿಯ ವಾರಿದ್, ನಿನ್ನಯ ಸನ್ನಿಧಿ ಶಾಂತಿಯ ವಾರಿದ್. ತಾಪಸಿಗಳ ಭೂಷಣನೇ, ತಾಪಸಿಗಳ ಭೂಷಣನೇ. ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಗುರು ರಮಣ ನೀನೆ ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಶಿವರೂಪ. ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಗುರು ರಮಣ ನೀನೆ ಭಕ್ತರ ಹೃದಯ ಪ್ರದೀಪ. ಜಪತಪಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ಹಿಮಾದ್ರಿಗೆ ಹೋಗಿ ತಾಪದ ಬಳಲಿದ ಯೋಗಿ ಜನ. ಜಪತಪಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ಹಿಮಾದ್ರಿಗೆ ಹೋಗಿ ತಾಪದ ಬಳಲಿದ ಯೋಗಿ ಜನ. ಕರುಣೆಯ ಕಂಬ ಜ್ಯೋತಿರ್ಬಿಂಬ, ಕರುಣೆಯ ಕಂಬ ಜ್ಯೋತಿರ್ಬಿಂಬ. ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ತೋರಿಸುವ ಸುದಿನ, ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ತೋರಿಸುವ ಸುದಿನ. ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಗುರು ರಮಣ ನೀನೆ ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಶಿವರೂಪ. ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಗುರು ರಮಣ ನೀನೆ ಭಕ್ತರ ಹೃದಯ ಪ್ರದೀಪ. ದೇವಾದಿಗಳು ಧಾವಿಸಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ತಪವನು ಗೈದರು ಶಾಂತಿಯಲಿ. ದೇವಾದಿಗಳು ಧಾವಿಸಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ತಪವನು ಗೈದರು ಶಾಂತಿಯಲಿ. ಈ ಮಹಿಮಾತ್ರೆಯ ಮಹೋನ್ನತ ಸಾರಲಿ, ಮಹಿಮಾತ್ರೆಯ ಮಹೋನ್ನತ ಸಾರಲಿ. ಶಿವಮೈ ತಾಳಿದ ಭೂಮಿಯಲಿ ಅರುಣಾಚಲದ ರೂಪಿನಲಿ. ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಗುರು ರಮಣ ನೀನೆ ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಶಿವರೂಪ. ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಗುರು ರಮಣ ನೀನೆ ಭಕ್ತರ ಹೃದಯ ಪ್ರದೀಪ. ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಗುರು ರಮಣ ನೀನೆ ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಶಿವರೂಪ. ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಗುರು ರಮಣ ನೀನೆ ಭಕ್ತರ ಹೃದಯ ಪ್ರದೀಪ. ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಗುರು ರಮಣ ನೀನೆ ಭಕ್ತರ ಹೃದಯ ಪ್ರದೀಪ. ಅರುಣಾಚಲ ಗುರು ರಮಣ ನೀನೆ ಭಕ್ತರ ಹೃದಯ ಪ್ರದೀಪ. ನಮೋ ರಮಣ.
ಓಂ ನಮೋ ಭಗವತೆ ಶ್ರೀರಮಣಾಯ. Bhagavan is the embodiment of compassion. He is the embodiment of grace. He gives us that grace all the time. But it is our duty to receive it and hold on to it. Because we don't pay attention to that grace, because we don't pay attention to that compassion, that blessing, we lose it and then we say, we are in darkness, we are ignorant, we are not able to get there. It is like I am being in darkness, in the forest of darkness, where I'm lost. And I go to Bhagavan and say, Oh Bhagavan, please come and help me. Take me out of this dark world. Take me out of this dark forest. Please come. And I don't even realize that when I say Ramana, he's already there. And I keep calling him, please come, please come. It is like I'm seeing the sun and trying to find the sun with a little torch. Or there is sky everywhere and I'm going on searching for the sky. The sun rises with the sun. The morning happens with the sun rising. And I keep waiting for Bhagavan to arrive. And I keep saying, the sun is not here, Bhagavan is not here. I want light. Bhagavan has written in his Ashtakam, a man searching for jnana is like the one holding a lamp in his hand and searching for darkness. It is like that. I am having the jnana within me. I am having that light within me. And I keep calling him from outside. I don't look within. And I see and I keep questioning, where is the light? Where is the light? And Bhagavan, when the time is right, he is the master of right placement, right timing. So when it is right, he comes where to come. He is already there. He reveals to me that he is there. He makes me realize that he is there all the time. He allows me to play around in the world. He allows me to enjoy the world. At one point, since he is the compassion embodiment, he makes us realize that there is no world, there is no me. Bhagavan alone is. I present to you a song written by Sadhom Swami, music by Sri L. Krishnan sir. அருளின் தலைவாரமணேஷா ஆன்மக்கதிரேவாராயோ அருளின் தலைவாரமணேஷா ஆன்மக்கதிரேவாராயோ காட்டுள் இருளில் கண்மயங்கி கதறுகின்றேன் வாராயோ காட்டுள் இருளில் கண்மயங்கி கதறுகின்றேன் வாராயோ அருளின் தலைவாரமணேஷா ஆன்மக்கதிரே வாராயோ பொழுது விடியும் சூரியனாய் புனிதா வருவாய் வருவாய் என்று பொழுது விடியும் சூரியனாய் புனிதா வருவாய் வருவாய் என்று பகலை காண பேராசையாய் பேராசைப்பட்டேன் பகலை காண பேராசைப்பட்டேன் பகவான் ரமணா வாராயோ பகலை காண பேராசைப்பட்டேன் ஞான சுடரே வாராயோ அருளின் தலைவா ரமணேஷா ஆன்மக்கதிரே வாராயோ எங்கே எங்கே ஒளியென்றே ஏங்கும் என்னை இருள் நீக்கி எங்கே எங்கே ஒளியென்றே ஏங்கும் என்னை இருள் நீக்கி அங்கே அழைத்து சென்றிடவே குருவே ரமணா வாராயோ அங்கே அழைத்து சென்றிடவே அறிவே ரமணா வாராயோ அருளின் தலைவா ரமணேஷா ஆன்மக்கதிரே வாராயோ அருளின் தலைவா ரமணேஷா ஆன்மக்கதிரே வாராயோ காட்டுள் இருளில் கண்மயங்கி கதறுகின்றேன் வாராயோ அருளின் தலைவா ரமணேஷா ஆன்மக்கதிரே வாராயோ பொழுது விடியும் சூரியனாய் புனிதா வருவாய் வருவாய் என்று பகலை காண பேராசைப்பட்டேன் பகவான் ரமணா வாராயோ பகலை காண பேராசைப்பட்டேன் ஞான சுடரே வாராயோ அருளின் தலைவா ரமணேஷா ஆன்மக்கதிரே வாராயோ எங்கே எங்கே ஒளி என்றே ஏங்கும் என்னை இருள் நீக்கி அங்கே அழைத்து சென்றிடவே அறிவே ரமணா வாராயோ அங்கே அழைத்து சென்றிடவே குருவே ரமணா வாராயோ அருளின் தலைவா ரமணேஷா ஆன்மக்கதிரே வாராயோ ரமணேஷா 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 அருளின் தலைவா ரமணேஷா ஆன்மக்கதிரே வாராயோ நமோ ரமணா. We will now have the sharing from a work of Bhagavan Ramana and the practice of self-enquiry session by Sri Dileep Simha sir.
Namo Ramana. ध्यायेत् शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् Svatmanandarasanubhuti Sarvanavadyangakam Srimantam Shri Ramanishwaram Guruvaram Yogasanadhyasitam Dhyayet Shri Ramanishwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramanishwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramanishwaram Hridaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahmamatram Yahamahamiti Sakshat Atmarupena Bhati Pradivishamanasa Swam Chinvata Machatava Pavana Chalanarodha Atmanishto Bhavatvam. Namo Ramana. I'll be reading from Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi, talk number 252, which happened on the 30th of September 1936. Sri Ramakrishna touched Vivekananda and the latter realized bliss. Is it possible? Maharshi. Sri Ramakrishna did not touch all for that purpose. He did not create Atma. He did not create realization. Vivekananda was ripe. He was anxious to realize. He must have completed the preliminary course in his past births. Such is possible for the right persons only. Devotee. Can the same miracle be worked for all? Maharshi. If they are fit, fitness is the point. A strong man controls the weaker man. A strong mind controls the weaker mind. That was what happened in the case cited. The effect was only temporary. Why did Vivekananda not sit quietly? Why did he wander about after such a miracle? Because the effect was only temporary. Devotee. How is the mind to dive into the heart? Maharshi. The mind now sees itself diversified as the universe. If the diversity is not manifest, it remains in its own essence. That is the heart. Entering the heart means remaining without distractions. The heart is the only reality. The mind is only a transient phase. To remain as oneself is to enter the heart. Because a man identifies himself with the body, is the world separate from him? This wrong identification arises because he has lost his moorings and has swerved from his original state. He is now advised to give up all these false ideas, to trace back his source, and to remain as the self. In that state, there are no differences, no questions will arise. All the Shastras are meant only to take the man, retrace his steps to the original source. He need not gain anything new. He must only give up his false ideas and useless assertions. Instead of doing it, he tries to catch hold of something strange and mysterious because he believes that his happiness lies elsewhere. That is the mistake. If one remains as the self, there is bliss. Probably he thinks that being quiet does not bring him about the state of bliss. That is due to his ignorance. The only practice is to find out to whom this question arises. Devotee, how to control lust, anger, etc. Maharshi, whose are those passions? Find out. If you remain as the self, there will be found to be nothing apart from the self. Then there will be no need to control, etc. Devotee, if a person whom we love dies, grief results. Shall we avoid such grief by either loving all alike or by not loving at all? Maharshi, if one dies, it results in grief for the other who lives. The way to get rid of grief is to not to live. Kill the one who grieves, who will remain then to suffer. The ego must die. That is the only way. The two alternatives amount to the same state. When all have become the one self, who is there to be loved or hated? Devotee, what is the sun marga? What is the sun here is SUN. What is the moon marga? Which of them is easier? Maharshi, Ravi marga or sun marga is gnana. Moon marga is yoga. They think that after purifying the 72,000 nadis in the body, Sushumna is entered and the mind passes to the Sahasrara, and there is nectar trickling. These are all mental concepts. The man is already overwhelmed by world concept. Other concepts are now added in the shape of this yoga. The object of all these is to rid the man of concepts and to make him inhere as the pure self, that is absolute consciousness, bereft of thoughts. Why not go straight to it? Why add new encumbrances to the already existing one? Bhagavan is the master who reveals the natural state of ourself. He, time and again, directs us from all these mental concepts that we comprehend, taking ourselves to be this body, taking ourselves to be an intelligent being, taking ourselves to be having a mind, and come to him with all these to be oneself, and then complain about them of having too many thoughts or having some ailments in the body or being incapable to recognize the truth despite all the intellectual capabilities or having read many, many books. We come to him and he simply points to that transcendental truth of oneself, which enabled one to recognize the body and its limitation, which enabled one to recognize the mind and its limitation, the one which enabled him to see the intellect and its limitation. That truth which enables and which is ever shining, that absolute consciousness which exists and shines, is what, in whose light we realize all these shades of gray and shades of light, which are all partial, which Bhagavan says, this which is all divisive, and it is all imaginary divisiveness that we are holding on to. Bhagavan simply says, let go all of them, all those concepts, all those divisions. Just turn to that ever being, that pure being consciousness, which is shining, whether it is the waking dream or sleep. And by turning to it and by recognizing its natural state, here and now, we recognize that there is nobody born, nothing ever happened, there is no body, no mind, no intellect to be dealt with. No huge concepts that we need to understand, decipher, and master. He turns our attention to that ever-present truth, shining even without the concept of I, but as the reality of I. And by turning our attention to that ever-present truth, which alone is capable of recognizing itself, he makes us recognize there is no two, one to see, one to hear. Na anyat pashyati, na anyat shrunoti, sa bhumaha, says Upanishad, where there is nothing else to be seen, nothing else to be heard. And Bhagavan, by turning our attention to that ever-present truth which recognizes itself, and in this talk he goes on to say, people think that when they hold on to something else, there is happiness. But when they recognize that when there is nothing to be held, no concepts or no objects, even a thought, then the bliss of that pure silence of the self is so wonderful. So he's asking us, because it is naturally available to all, effortlessly available to all, he's asking us to let go all the effort, which rises because we hold on to false idea that we are either the body, the mind, or the intellect, or an individual. He asks us to diligently question that idea. And to question that idea, whenever these ideas rise within us as form of thoughts or as form of objects, he diligently asks us to inquire, to whom is this? Who am I? And by that very question, he is asking us not to answer that question, but really seek who that I is. Then that pure absolute consciousness in whose light we are able to see the ideas or concept or even the question, who am I, becomes available to all of us here and now as the true transcendental light. And he says, hold on to that, let go all the thoughts, just remain, summa irit, just be. And by being there in that truth as the truth, he reveals the highest, which is the oneness in everything, which never had any division. Just to say even oneness with all is not correct, because it never became anything. That truth remains as the truth from time. Even to say time is improper. That truth alone is. And to recognize that and to be that is the whole purpose of the journey, says Bhagavan. With Bhagavan's immense grace, with which alone we have come to this most direct path, which reveals the truth much more clearer, as Bhagavan says, than the gooseberry in the one's palm, because in there you have to see the gooseberry apart and an objective experience is necessary. But in here, the self recognizing its own majesty simply drops everything, simply drops and let goes all this unwanted division and then fighting back to its unity. Simply drops it as like a child's play and remains silent. And in that silence, that beautiful, glorious bliss of itself, that mauna, Atma mauna, is experienced, says Bhagavan. With his abundant grace, let us practice self-enquiry for the next 10 minutes. Om Namo Bhagavate Ramananjali. Namo Ramana. Thank you.
Namo Ramana, sir. We will now have the sharing of Anma Bodham by Sri Venkatesh Deshpande, sir.
Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviram Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jnanamulam Gurur Murte, Puja Mulam Mantramulam Vakyam Mokshamulam Guru Prarthana Mokshamulam Guru Prarthana. We're doing Manana Atma Bodha, and the last satsang we had done Manana on verse number 58. We'll do a quick recap on that. Brahma and others enjoy in proportion only a minute particle of the entire unbroken bliss. And Brahma and others enjoy in proportion only a minute particle of the entire unbroken bliss. The bliss of realization is beyond human concept. Spiritual masters have been ceaselessly trying to allure mankind to that supreme bliss, but man fails to conceive the resplendence and glory of such an experience. Hence, a quantitative and qualitative analysis of the bliss of Brahman is given in the verse. An unknown entity can be measured only in terms of known factors. The bliss of realization is compared to the joys familiar to mankind. Man knows the joys of the world, and he can also imagine the ethereal enjoyments of deities in heaven. The aggregate of the happiness of the entire living kingdom, all the happiness enjoyed by the celestial beings in heaven, and that enjoyed by Lord Brahma himself, together represent only an infinitesimal fraction of that absolute bliss. The comparison helps us one to gain some concept of that infinite, immeasurable bliss of realization. So the next verse is verse number 59, which talks about I can't be anything else. So I request Sapna to kindly chant the verse, please, for us.
Yes, sir. Namo Ramana. Tadyuktam akilam vastu vyavaharaschidanvitaha tasmat sarvagatam brahma kshire sarpirivakile. Tadyuktam akilam vastu vyavaharaschidanvitaha tasmat sarvagatam brahma kshire sarpirivakile. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sapna. All the objects are united with that Brahman. All actions are dependent upon that. Hence, Brahman pervades everything just as butter pervades milk. So, this is a very important verse because it tells us how, when you say Ishavasya Sarvam, everything is pervaded by God. How is it pervaded by God? This is elaborated here. It says all objects are united with that Brahman. All actions are dependent upon that. Hence, Brahman pervades everything just as butter pervades the milk. Brahman is described as one infinite, all pervading reality. It is said to permeate all beings and things in the world. If this be true, how does it elude human cognition? This question is answered deftly by the metaphor used in the verse. It also provides the technique by which you can realize the all-pervading Brahman. The world consists of sentient things and insentient things. Brahman expresses as Sat, existence in the inert objects, and as intelligence, Chit, and bliss, Ananda, in the living beings. Brahman pervades the entire universe. It exists in you like the butter in milk. Butter exists in milk, and yet it is not visible to the naked eye. Similarly, Brahman is not cognizable as such. The ingenuity of this metaphor is that the technique of unfoldment of the self so perfectly coincides with the method of extraction of butter from milk, as we can be seen from the following. The process of extraction of butter from milk starts with the milk boiling over on a slow fire. After it has boiled sufficiently, the milk is cooled down. Into the cooled milk, a little curd is added and kept away for the night with normal temperature, away from the heat of the hearth or the cold of the refrigerator. By early morning, the milk transforms into curds. The curd is then churned. The butter separates. The churning is regulated to prevent the butter melting back into the curd again. Thus, butter is extracted every day and added to a bowl. The water in the bowl is changed to keep it fresh. When sufficient quantity is collected, the butter is boiled and converted into ghee. Everybody knows the process for making butter. In this analogy, milk represents the mind. After you experience the trials and tribulations of life, your mind settles down to a quieter life. This is what happens when you are experiencing the world. There's too many trials and tribulations, and your mind settles down to a quieter life. Such quietude may be found in your own home, away from the din and roar of the marketplace, which is the hearth, which is the heat, without having to retire to the solitude of the Himalayas, which is the refrigerator. When your mind is thus made receptive, a little dose of spiritual study is administered. It's like the curd that is added. So a little dose of spiritual study is administered. You react with time. Your thoughts, which were hitherto running into sensual fields, characterized by the fluidity of milk, becomes more mature, characterized by the solidity of the curds. Thereafter, in the early hours of the morning, your intellect must reflect on the truth, negate the unreal, and assert the reality, suggested by the process of churning, or even doing self-enquiry. When knowledge butter reveals itself to you, the knowledge obtained must be preserved with devotion. So as knowledge increases, you are prepared for a deeper contemplation and meditation. Thus, having prepared yourself, meditate upon the self, and in the intensity of your meditation, you realize the supreme truth. It's a beautiful explanation of how the curds is made, and then how from that churning happens. Then you get the butter out, and once the butter is got out, you have to watch the butter and move it into another bowl and put fresh water in that, and then you can make into ghee. So similarly, here also talks about this whole process. What happens? Man gets fed up of this world, going hither, thither, everywhere, and then wants takes a repose. He wants to relax. So you don't have to go to the Himalayas or go here or there. You just have to keep quiet. You just have to develop quietude. You have to become quiet. Then what happens? When your mind is thus receptive to little dose of spiritual study, so at that point you are receptive. You're ready to take a little spiritual. It's like they're adding little curds to the milk. When the curd is boiled and it is cooled and it's kept, and then the curd is added. So here also a little bit of spiritualized. But one says you just have to do 15 minutes of self-inquiry. He doesn't say you have to do every day, all the time self-inquiry. This is like that. 15 minutes of spiritual studies administered, and says you do 15 minutes in 24 hours into 60 minutes. In so many minutes, you have to just do 15 minutes. It's like that spiritual dose, which is administered. You react with time. With time, what happens? You react, and your thoughts, which were running, held like milk, it was fluid, it becomes a little, the mind becomes quieter and quieter and becomes a little more solidified like the curds. Then what happens? You have to churn it. Unless you churn the curd, then only you get the butter. So what happens? The Bhagavan says, every morning you get up early in the morning, do self-inquiry, find out what is Nitya, what is Anitya, and then what happens? Then you use Viveka and Vairagya to be able to understand that. And that is the churning. The churning takes place. And then what happens is the inner truths are revealed to you. And once they're revealed to you, then what happens? You go in, it's like the butter. When it's come out, then you have to bring out more and more, and you keep on churning it within. And then you go deeper and deeper into yourself. It says beautifully, you're prepared for deeper contemplation and meditation. Thus, having prepared yourself, meditate upon the self, who you really are. And in the intensity of the meditation, you realize the supreme truth. The more and more you go inwards and realize who you really are, the supreme truth will be revealed. When the supreme truth is revealed, you become fearless and free. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana. Thank you.
Namo Ramana. We will now have the sharing by Ujwal Jagadeesh.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We started our meditations on Bhagavan Ramana's Arunachala Navamanimalai, the 9-gem necklace on Arunachala written by Bhagavan Ramana. Bhagavan sings the glory of Arunachala as follows. Achalane ayinum achavaitanil achalayam ammai yediradum achala uruvil achakti udungida ஓங்கும் அருணாச்சலம் என்றே Hari. Achalane Adaru Chitsabeyalli Achala Shivanu Shakti Edurige Adi Achala Rupadi Ashakti Adagalu ಬೆಳಗುವುದು ಅರುಣಾಚಲವೇ ಎಂದು ಅರಿ. This first verse of Arunachala has been set to Shankaravarana Raga, the Raga which is the ornament of Lord Shankara, Lord Shiva, Arunachala Shiva by Srimati Sulochana Rajan. And we will meditate on these verses in the lines of the commentary written by G. Kameshwar Mama, which was published in our monthly journal, the Ramana Way. Achalane Ayinu, though motionless, Lord Shiva, who is by nature motionless, absolutely still, Achavaitanil, in that golden hall of Chidambaram, the Kanakasabhai of Chidambaram, Achalayam Ammai Yediradum. He dances in front of his consort, Goddess Parvati, who stands still and serene. Achala Uruvil, in his Achala, still motionless form, Achakti Udungida, that Parashakti, that Shakti, the supreme power, Parvati, having been absorbed in himself as the non-dual reality. Arunachalam Ongum Yenrari, know that he rises resplendent as this Arunachala mountain. Arunachala or Shiva by very nature is stillness, motionless. And Parvati is the Prakriti, which is ever moving, ever changing. When we had gone to meet Swami Shantanandapuri, when he was staying in Tiruvannamalai and Ramanashramam, we went to him and sang a song where we spoke about Ramana as the embodiment of Arunachala. And talking about Arunachala, Swami told that the word Aruna is another name for Parvati, and Achala is stillness, which is Purusha or Shiva. So here Aruna, which is Parvati, and Achala, which is Shiva, have come together and they have got merged with each other. That is why this place is that beautiful place where Shiva and Parvati are together as Ardhanarishwara. And that's why this place is very, very special. And talking about Shiva, the stillness, and Parvati, the movement, he told that it is like what we learn as the potential energy and the kinetic energy in science. When the potential energy is when the water is stored at a high level in the dam, lot of potential energy is there. And that energy is so massive. That energy is the Shiva Tattva or the Purusha Tattva. But when the doors of the dam is open, the water gushes down, and that gushing water is the kinetic energy. And we learn in science that although we have all these turbines and generators which are placed down to harness this kinetic energy, we understand that we cannot completely harness that full energy, the potential energy. What we see, what we harness with itself is so much. It can light all our houses through the hydroelectricity that we have here. But still, what we harness is only a fraction of that huge energy called the potential energy. So the Shiva is that potential energy who is stillness, motionless. But what we see is that very same energy which is moving. And when it moves, we are only able to harness a small portion of that magnanimous energy called the potential energy of Shiva. It is this the inherent state where Shiva is Achala and Parvati is ever moving. In Chidambaram, the opposite is happening. This Parvati is stunned and she is still, but Shiva is dancing his cosmic dance. That is in Chidambaram, in the Kanaka Sabai. But in Arunachala, Shiva is in his inherent state of stillness. And in that stillness, Parvati is also merged and she has also become still. Parvati, who is ever moving, she is the kinetic energy, she is the Prakriti which is ever changing and moving. She has also become still in that stillness. And when this Parvati, when she merges with Shiva, then the true light of Arunachala shines forth. And this is the glory of Arunachala. This is what the first verse says. There's a beautiful story how this first verse came to being. One Dikshitar from Chidambaram came to Ramana. He was staying in the town. So every day he was coming up the hill to see Ramana on the slopes of Arunachala. And every day he used to pester Bhagavan saying, Swami, you should come to Chidambaram. Chidambaram is one of the Panchabhuta Kshetras. Arunachala is one. Arunachala is the Agnilinga Kshetra. And Kanchi, we have the Ekambareshwara, which is the Prithvilinga. And in Kalahasti, we have the Vayulinga. And in Jambukeshwara, Swami, in Tiruchi, near Tiruchi, we have the Apahalinga, that is the water linga. And Arunachala is the fire linga, but the Akashalinga is Chidambaram. You should come to Chidambaram. It is told that if you have darshan of Chidambara Nataraja, you are liberated. So please come. Please come to Chidambaram. Every day he comes and meets Bhagavan. He's telling the same thing. And again he goes back to the town for his work. And the next day when he comes to visit, again he's telling the glory of Chidambaram. And when this was happening for a few days, Ramana wrote this verse and it started with Achalane Ainum Achavai Tannil Achalayam Ammai Yadiradu. And he wrote this verse and gave it to that Dikshitar. And the Dikshitar, who was a scholar by himself, so after reading this, understood the truth that it is the same power which is dancing in Chidambaram is available here as that Achala Tattva. There is no difference between that dancing Nataraja and this still Arunachala Shiva. Both are the very same power. If you see one, if you understand one, it is enough. The true Arunachala shines within. True Nataraja is dancing within the heart as I, says Bhagavan. So both Arunachala is the heart, and in the heart, Nataraja is dancing his dance of I. So both are the very same power. Understood that Dikshitar, and when he went back to Chidambaram, So that is the story. This is how this one stray verse became the first invocatory verse of the Navamanimalai, which other 9 beautiful verses flowed through Bhagavan. When we are talking about the Achala Tattva, the Nataraja is the movement Tattva, the Tattva of movement. And Achala Tattva is when we think of that Shiva who is still and silent, we think of Dakshinamurti. The Nataraja and Dakshinamurti, although they look different, but they represent the very same Tattva. When we see the Nataraja, we can see that there is this huge Prabhavali of fire. And when we see Dakshinamurti, he is the Arunachala Yogi, Arunagiri Yogi in Arunachala. He is sitting in the backdrop of this fire mountain Arunachala. Nataraja has the fire Prabhavali. Here we have the fire Linga, the Agni Linga Arunachala. And Nataraja, when he is dancing his cosmic dance, his hair is flying in the air. But in Dakshinamurti, it is very, very calmly flowing on his shoulders. Just like Nataraja, who has a Dhamaruga in his right hand and the Agni in his left hand, we have the same Agni, and he has one Japamala. Instead of the Dhamaruga, he has the Japamala in his hand. And the one Nataraja is holding the Abhaya Hasta. Don't fear. And he is calling all his devotees to come closer to him and surrender to his feet. And Dakshinamurti is holding the Jnana Mudra. And in the other hand, he holds the Vedas and the scriptures, representing that through the study of Vedas, through the study of Upanishads and Vedanta, and also through meditating and doing nididhyasana of what is learned, one can attain jnana. In the life of Bhagavan, we have understood that he won over the fear of death and he attained jnana. Just to say that the Abhayahasta and the Jnana Mudra, the Chin Mudra, both represents the very same self-knowledge, which is full of knowledge and without any fear. Fearlessness of Abhayahasta is shown. We see that in the feet of the Nataraja, there's one demon called the Muyalagan, who represents the Ahankara or the ignorance of the Jiva. And the same Muyalagan is there under the feet of Dakshinamurti too. The Nataraja is lifting his left leg up and pointing his left leg through his left hand, saying that come and surrender to my feet and I will give you protection. And Dakshinamurti is sitting with his left leg on his right thigh, representing the same thing. And we see that both of them take us to the very same goal, which is the self-knowledge. One, that is Dakshinamurti, through stillness, through silence, through enquiry, through Jnana Marga, that he takes us to self-knowledge. And Shiva, he, with his dance, he is telling us to surrender to that dance. We learn in Abhinaya Darpana that Angikam Bhuvanam Yasya, every movement in this world is Shiva's dance. When we understand this, then we surrender to that movement. We understand that everything is perfect as it is. And when we understand this, we surrender. And when we truly surrender, we abide in the self and we become self-aware. And both of them have taken that form to give Upadesha to seekers like Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanat Kumara and Sanat Sujata. We know the story of Dakshinamurti where the Sanaka Sanandana were searching for a teacher and they found a silent teacher who is Dakshinamurti. And Panini, in his Ashtadhyayi, he sings in a shloka, Drittavasane Nataraja Rajau Nanada Dhakkan Nava Panchavaram Udhyartu Kamo Sanakadi Siddha Yetat Vimarshe Shiva Sutra Jalam. At the end of his dance, Drittavasane Nataraja Rajo, the Raja, the Lord, Nataraja, he moved his Dhamaruga Nava Panchavaram, 9 plus 5 times, which is 14 times. And when he played his Dhamaruga for 14 times, why did he play his Mridanga for 14 times? Uddhartu Kama Sanakadi Siddhan, those Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanat Kumara, Sanat Sujata, and other seekers who are all waiting for the Upadesha to save them, to bless them. He created the Shiva Sutra Jalam, a necklace of Maheshwara Sutrani, the 14 syllabus which starts with Ayut, Ayun, Rul, Ruk. Okay, all these are the basis of the Sanskrit grammar and the Sanskrit alphabets and all the language. In one of the versions in the Dakshinamurti story itself, it is told that when Sanaka Sanandana came and surrendered to Dakshinamurti as their guru, they asked questions. And out of compassion, just like how the Nataraja created the syllables to communicate the truth, Dakshinamurti spoke to them, and he spoke, and more doubts appeared, and they started asking more doubts, and he started answering those doubts. So there was no end to this doubts and answers. So at one point of time, Dakshinamurti became silent, and in that silence, all the questions merged, and they attained the supreme knowledge. So the Nataraja Tattva and the Dakshinamurti Tattva are one and the same. And here at Arunachala, both Tattva have become together, they have come together. And when we understand that the movement that we do, the work that we do, and the stillness of the self, they both emerge and set in the same source. When we understand this, then the true Arunachala shines within us. And that is the glory of Arunachala, says Ramana in this beautiful verse of Navamanimalai. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. We will now have the sharing of Ramana Ashtottaram, the verses from Ramana Ashtottaram by Dr. Sarada.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self, manifest as Ramana, we in this part of the satsang are meditating on the Ramana Ashtottara Shatanamavali of Vishwanatha Swami. And we have meditated in the last session on the Nama Rachitachala Tandavaya Namaha. This seems in good continuation of what Ujwal Jagadeesh was just meditating upon, the Achala Tattva and the movement or the dance of the Achala Tattva. And we found that Bhagavan has referred to this Achala Tandava, and he says that always Arunachala is ever dancing that dance of stillness. And that epithet has been given by Vishwanatha Swami to Bhagavan as well. And in the next epithet, in the next Nama, he says, Gambhiraya Namaha. Rachitachala Tandavaya Namaha. Om Gambhiraya Namaha. Om Paramacharyaya Namaha. Gambhira. So here the Gambhira is that which is very deep. just like Gambhira. It is very intensely majestic. If we look at the Rachitachala Tandava as the movement or the Shakti or the dynamic aspect of the self, the Gambhira is actually the Achala aspect of the self. And Sri Ramanacentre Swami has given us a sweet approach to the Gambhiratva or the magnitude or the stillness of Bhagavan. He says, how silent was Bhagavan? How majestically silent was he that even Arunachala felt a little shy about his own silence. Says Muruganar, and this has been quoted by Swami. And so he says that Arunachala wondered, when is this boy who is just in such a state of majestic stillness going to begin the movement, going to begin the Tandava, going to begin speaking, going to begin writing poetry and explaining in words the glory of Arunachala to one and all. Thus thinking, Arunachala assumed the form of Satyamangalam Venkatesh and came and wrote 5 hymns on Arunachala, whereupon Bhagavan, in response, as an offering of response, composed the 5 hymns on Arunachala. Being the master of etiquette, Bhagavan could not send away the poet who had made this offering empty-handed, and so he returned the compliment, says Ramanacentre Swami. So that is the Gambhira, that is the majesty of Bhagavan. When we see Bhagavan's pictures, many of the pictures, especially when I had the privilege of working on Sri Natarajan's book, Arunachala from Rig Veda to Ramana Maharshi, and working on the pictures of Arunachala and the pictures of Bhagavan, very often it would appear to me that there was no difference between the two, even physically. The form, the way Bhagavan would sit down or lie down, it looks so much like a stance of Arunachala, one of the aspects of Arunachala that we can see as we move around the hill. And this great majesty we can see in one of the archival films of Bhagavan, where Bhagavan is just seated and there is a gathering. It might have been a Jayanti day or some special occasion. And Bhagavan is still, he is just looking, as the cameramen and directors often say, he has the infinity look. And they're so still, he is so still. And what happens? There is no movement anywhere, and one wonders, is it just a still picture which has been put into the movie frame? Is it a photograph or is it really a movie? And then one sees the movement of the incense, the smoke moving gently upwards. Then one knows, this is really a movie. In fact, Kunju Swami in his reminiscences, he says, while at Skandashramam, describing those days, he says, there was a routine which was normally followed, and that routine was that, like Bhagavan, early morning, there would be some chanting of Aksharamanamalai, there would be some other chanting. Bhagavan would go up on the hill, then he would come back, and they would eat something. But then there was only one meal in a day, or perhaps rarely 2 meals. And then Bhagavan would be in such an inward mood. If he went into the silence while the Veda Parayana was being done or some other chanting was being done, it would be very difficult to wake Bhagavan up, says Kunjaswami. Sometimes for hours they would just wait for Bhagavan to come out of that majestic silence. And so if it had become a long wait where they might have got tired, they would sometimes take to blowing on their conches, long calls on the conch were given to Bhagavan, and after which he would slowly come out of that silence, it is said by Kunjaswami. That is the majesty of Bhagavan. And that majesty, we have heard many instances where people have come to Bhagavan without the intention of prostrating to him or accepting him as a guru. But the moment they have come into his presence, they have simply prostrated themselves to him because of the power of that presence, the majesty of the self. And there cannot be anything more majestic than the self, Gambhira, because everything is contained in the self. So that is the majesty of Bhagavan, which drew even little children to his presence, says Humphreys. Little children would come there and sit in silence from morning till evening and then go down the hill. They would climb up the hill all the way, says Humphreys. And he says it was very touching to see it. He himself has said that the self was radiating. He calls it God was radiating terrifically from that form of Bhagavan, radiating terrifically, he says. So that is the extent of the majesty, radiating terrifically, and the body was a mere corpse. So he could see that it was like a Bhagavan's frame, that form was like a very thin veil for the majesty of the self to reveal itself and for all to see. And we can see that majesty, that Gambhira, that splendor of Bhagavan's majesty when we look at Bhagavan's eyes as well, and the immense depth of the vastness, the magnitude of that anubhava, that atmanubhava, is seen by the devotees when they look into Bhagavan's eyes. So, in the very opening verse, the prayer verse, Vishwanatha Swami says Gambhira, and here he calls him Gambhira. Gambhira, normally we look at it as someone who's serious. The word is used in common parlance to depict a certain degree of seriousness. But then that is also very important. It is important to be earnest. It is important to be serious. The self is full of joy. But the journey back to the self has to be an intense and earnest journey. It is not so much serious as in somber. The word in English, somber, means one who is looking very stern or looks upon life as a stern process. But there has to be extreme degree of earnestness and absolute discipline with oneself, absolute practice of dharma. Dharma itself is a word which can be associated with the word gambhira, because it appears to be very stern, very, very serious. But that earnestness, that adherence to the discipline alone can give us the truth. Professor K. Swaminathan would often say that if one does not follow the dharma, jnana cannot be attained. And we, while looking at Bhagavan's biography in a deeper and more loving manner for all the nuances in that biography, and looking at it from the perspective of Nritya or Natya, in the childhood of Bhagavan, we could see that Bhagavan was born to Sundaram Iyer because he was the embodiment of righteousness, of dharma, says Bhagavan himself. So it is that Gambhirata, it is that majesty which Vishwanatha Swami is talking about in this Nama. And when we look at that majesty of the Sat, just as when we see the vastness of the ocean, or we see the scale of the mountain touching the clouds, touching the sky, the mind becomes still. So it is that when the eye seeks its source, it begins to see the vastness of that source. It begins to see the gambhira of the source, and it falls silent. It becomes quieter and quieter, like a river approaching the ocean. That is the gambhira which Vishwanatha Swami is speaking about when he is referring to Bhagavan through this epithet. And certainly all who came to see Bhagavan, especially in those early years, when he had even externally absolutely no concern for the body, when his hair was matted and his body was covered with grime and dust, must have seen in that young, innocent young boy the magnitude of his Atmanubhava. And that is why the people, be it Ratnama, the Devadasi, or later Parani Swami, who stayed to serve Bhagavan throughout his life till his last breath, would have seen that glory. And it is said in Gurumurtam, a sage came to see Bhagavan, and seeing him, he said, "This is the fire of jnana." Such is the magnificence of Bhagavan. Om Namo Bhagavate Vishnu.
Namo Ramanaka. We will now have the chanting of Aksharamanamalai by Srimati V. Radha.
Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachalam. Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachalam. முட்டையடித்தன்னை வெட்ட வெளியில் நீ நட்டமாடினயன் அருணாச்சலம். மோகம் தவிர்த்தும் உன் மோகம் அவைத்தும் என் மோகம் தீராயேன் அருணாச்சலம். மௌனிய கற்போல் மலராதிருந்தால் மௌனமிதாமோ அருணாச்சலம். யவனின் வாயின் மண்ணினையட்டி என் பிழை பொழித்த தருணாச்சலாம். யாரும் அறியாதென் மதியினை மருட்டி எவர் கொள்ளை கொண்ட தருணாச்சலாம். ரமணன் என்றுரைத்தேன் தோஷம் கொள்ளாதெனை ரமித்திட செய்யவா அருணாச்சலாம். ராப்பகலில்லா வெறுவெளி வீட்டில் ரமித்திடுவோம் அருணாச்சலம். லட்சியம் வைத்தருள் அஸ்திரம் விட்டென்னை பக்ஷித்தாய் பிராணனோடு அருணாச்சலாம். லாப நீக பர லாபமில் என்னையுற்று லாபம் என்றுற்றனை அருணாச்சலாம். வரும்படி சொல்லில்லை வந்தென் படியள வருந்திடும் தலைவிதி அருணாச்சலாம். வாவென்றகம் புக்கும் வாழ்வருள் அன்று என் வாழ்விழுந்தேன் அருள் அருணாச்சலாம். விட்டிடிற் கஷ்டமா விட்டிதாதுனை உயிர் விட்டிட அருள் புரி அருணாச்சலாம். அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ 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 அருணாச்சலாம். அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலாம். அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலாம். அருணாச்சலம் வாழி அன்பர்களும் வாழி அக்ஷரமணமாலை வாழி. நமோ ரமணா.
Namo Ramana. We will conclude today's satsang with the Ashtottara puja to Bhagavan. The Ashtottara puja will happen at Dileep Simha's altar. The puja will be done by Sri Dileep Simha. The Ashtottaram will be chanted by Sri Vaibhavji and Prarthana along with Revathi Shankar. We conclude the satsang with the Arati song to Bhagavan.
नमो रमण. भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तर शतनामावलिः अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशे यस्योर्विमात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि. महासेन महोक्षेन जाताय नमः. श्रीरमणाय नमः. ओम गुरवे नमः. ओम अखंड संविदाकाराय नमः. ओम महोजसे नमः. ओम कारणोद्भवाय नमः. ओम जगद्धितावताराय नमः. ओम श्री भूमिनाथस्थलोस्थिताय नमः. ओम पराशर कुलोत्तंसाय नमः. ओम सुंदरार्य तपःफलाय नमः. ओम कमनीय सुचारित्राय नमः. सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः. शोणाचल महोलीन मानसाय नमः. ओम स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः. ओम श्रीमद्द्वादशान्त महास्थले लब्ध विद्योदयाय नमः. ओम महाशक्ति निपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः. ओम परमार्थविदे नमः. तीव्राय नमः. ओम पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः. ओम इंदुमौलिना पितृमते नमः. ओम पितुरादेशतः शौर्णशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः. ओम तपोमयाय नमः. ओम उदासीनाय नमः. महायोगिने नमः. ओम महोत्साहाय नमः. ओम कुशाग्रदिये नमः. ओम शान्तसङ्कल्पसंरम्भाय नमः. सुसंद्रशे नमः ॐ सवित्रे नमः ॐ स्थिराय नमः ॐ तपश्चपित सर्वांगाय नमः ॐ भुजविलोचनाय नमः ॐ चंद्रिकासितः श्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः ॐ चूतवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः ॐ चूर्णिताखिलविभ्रमाय नमः ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः ॐ त्रिगुणातिगाय नमः ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः ॐ विराजदशलाकृतये नमः उद्दीप्तनयनाय नमः पूर्णाय नमः ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः ॐ गम्भीराय नमः ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः नमः ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः ॐ स्वराजे नमः ॐ महर्षये नमः ॐ भगवते नमः ॐ ईड्याय नमः
ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः ॐ विमलाय नमः ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः ॐ आप्ताय नमः ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः ॐ समदृशे नमः ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः ॐ सत्याय नमः ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः ॐ श्रीशोणाचलहृद्भूतस्कन्दाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताघ्रिसरोरुहाय नमः ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्छिन्नसंशयाय नमः ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः ॐ सौम्याय नमः ॐ आत्मवते नमः ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थानामाराध्याय नमः ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः ॐ महाभागाय नमः ॐ मातृमुक्तिविदायकाय नमः ॐ विनताय नमः ॐ विनुताय नमः ॐ विप्राय नमः ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः ॐ दर्शनादघसंहारिणे नमः ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः ॐ हृच्छान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः ॐ स्मरणाद्बन्धमोचकाय नमः ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः ॐ शोणाद्रीशस्तुतिद्रष्ट्रे नमः ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः ॐ गुहाय नमः ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः ॐ भवरोगभिषग्वराय नमः ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः ॐ देवतमाय नमः ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः ॐ सेनान्ये नमः ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः ॐ श्रीरमणभगवते नमः श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनामपूजां समर्पयामि
यस्ताणोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्या जनिं प्राप्यत दिव्यानुग्रहसुप्रवाहविवशस्थादात्म्यभावं गतः निष्ठस्वगभीरनित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनस्येकराट् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदं लोकोत्तरज्योतिषे
नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावर्ण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि दर्शन सुख मंगल मुख सकल जीवहित सम्मुख ब्रह्म संगिये सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिव नंद पुष्ट परम महर्षि ब्रह्मनिष्ठ समदर्शी नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावर्ण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि ನಮ್ಮ ಮನವದೊಂದು ಕಾಡು ನೀನರಿತಿ ಅದರ ಜಾಡು ಹಿತವನರಿತು ನೀಡು ತೆಮ್ಮ ಕೊರೆಯ ತಣಿಸಲೈ ಬೇಡಲೆಂದು ಬಂದ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿಯೇ ತಣಿವೆ ಬಯ್ಯ ಮೂಡಿಗಾರನೇ ಹಿತವ ನುಡಿದು ಪೊರೆ ನಮ್ಮನು ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಸಂಗಿಯೇ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರ್ಣ